Calaroga Shark Media.
Hey, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Deadline did a big article about how stand-up comedy has never been bigger. Comedians are setting records for attendance. Take Nate Bargatze, for example, who earlier this year set an Amazon streaming record before going on to sell a record number of tickets to a show at Nashville's Bridgestone Arena. Yeah, remember he sold one extra seat to break the record? He also brought SNL its highest-rated episode of the season and easily the best episode of the season. They talk about Matt Rife, a, quote, young up-and-comer with 10-plus years under his belt, pick one, who hit the upper echelons of comedy seemingly overnight after blowing up on TikTok. Also operating at the highest level is Gabe Fluffy Iglesias, who sold out Dodger Stadium and went back for a second show. According to German data gathering platform Statista, I put a little Latin spin on that. Is that how the Germans would say Statista, or they'd be like Stastida or something mean sounding? Anyway, those guys say yearly revenue from the comedy market in the U.S. has increased from $1.7 billion in 2017 to $3.1 billion in 2023. Polestar's top touring comic of 2022 was, do you want to guess? It was Sebastian Maniscalco at over $44.9 million. Whew. Deadline spoke to a few comedians, including Trevor Wallace, whose debut special Pterodactyl debuts on Prime Video November 14th. That's Tuesday. Trevor says stand-up is cool again. I feel like 10, 15 years ago, you would kind of go, oh, there's comedy on the cruise. We could stop by. But now it's like all these clubs are packed every night. Fahim Anwar says the way people were excited to discover bands, people are excited to discover new comedians, and that never existed before. The conversation turned to late night. Fahim said, late night's great. I grew up with it, but it did feel a little more antiquated after the pandemic, right? There's something about it. COVID kind of accelerated its descent, but it's still fun. I don't know. It's historic. It's like baseball at this point. Fortune Feemster asks, what does late night look like going into this new era? Podcasts are interviewing everybody all the time, so what they did, that was unique. Now everybody's doing it in some fashion. Deadline asked the comedians about the trade-off between licensing your stand-up special or producing it yourself and keeping the rights. Fortune said, I think people have to decide what they want to do, what they want to invest in. Are they okay with paying for the production costs? This business is all about looking down the road. What's the big picture? If your big picture is to make money off a special, then that's not the way to go. If your big picture is, I want all these eyes on it, I want to sell tickets, then that's an option. Andrew Santino said, you want to own your own material. I think the music industry taught us one thing about owning your own IP. Not to talk crap, but yeah, Comedy Central for a long time, you were kind of a slave to their game, and that worked at the time. But now it's changing for the better, so people get to own their own stuff, distribute it how they want, and that only opens us up for more opportunities. Whereas a movie and a sitcom deal was once the be-all, end-all for comics, that's not necessarily the case any longer. Fahim Anwar said, I've been doing stand-up and been alive long enough to see it change. It's weird because the blueprint was the same for so long, and things have changed at light speed in the last 10, 15 years, and I think it's liberating. I think it behooves the stand-up comedian because back in the day, you had to be the wacky neighbor on a sitcom or have a sitcom for people to come to see you do the road, whereas now that's not the case. It's almost a hindrance. I have friends and stuff who were on sitcoms they couldn't draw on the road just because pop culture is so fractured and segmented. Now things are getting very, very niche, so acting has become less integral to our job. Sam Morrell told the Columbus Underground, I wish I was just better at sitting in front of a computer and writing. Occasionally I'll come up with stuff. I used to be really good at it, and now I think a lot of my jokes come from just like walking around doing stuff. And then I'm like, wait, this could be funny. And then sometimes I'll just write it down, and sometimes I'll be with somebody and I say, and I kind of gauge their reaction. And either way, even if they don't laugh, I write it down because if I think it's funny, maybe there's something I can do with it. And then I just throw it in like a Word doc and try to punch it up and make it funny and try it on stage at night. I'm pretty bad. Sometimes I get stuck in a routine and you're just like, airport. Why do comedians have so many airport jokes? Well, that's where we are constantly. So you do need new experiences. I went out on vacation, which I never do. You get some joke ideas out of that. It'll open up different parts of your brain, you know? I never thought about that about the airport. Very insightful. The aforementioned Matt Rife was on Jimmy Fallon during the week. Rife talked about doing comedy for 11 years, not being able to get a special or get a TV show, not even being able to get on The Tonight Show. Rife said, these things just weren't adding up. And at a certain point you go, am I delusional? Maybe I'm not funny. Maybe I'm not supposed to do this. And then just one random video kind of changed everything. Rife said he reluctantly began posting videos on TikTok at the beginning of 2022. He was invited to Just for Laughs in Montreal. Later that year, an improv comedy show he started with comedian Paul Elia was invited to Just for Laughs Montreal, but not the Matt Rife part. Oh, ouch. Organizers told him he could perform, but they wouldn't pay him for his work or pay for his travel at all. He sucked up his pride and went anyway. He had an edited video called The Lazy Hero ready to post, but was feeling pretty down, starting to wonder what the point was. A friend told him, go ahead and post it, since it was already edited. They went out for the night. The video went, quote, insanely viral. Over the next couple days, got 20 to 30 million views. Rife said, "It's been unreal. My entire life has changed in a matter of 14 months. I'm so grateful. Going from playing clubs for 35 people who got free tickets to breaking Ticketmaster is insane." Good for him. I've listened to a few interviews with him. He seems really grounded. Westward asked Jay Pharoah what inspired him to get into comedy and do impressions. Jay said, "I started doing impressions when I was 6. The kids at private school were corny. I would just roast and cook everybody because I realized y'all aren't gangsters. All your parents have Bentleys and you're members of the country club. There's no gangster stuff going down with you." Once I came to that realization, I just started getting up in front of my friends to perform. What are your favorite impressions? He says, "I don't really have a list, but I like when people ask me to do the obscure ones like John Mulaney, Jason Momoa, Jason Statham, or Joaquin Phoenix. I like those because I've been asked 1 million times to do Kevin Hart. I've been asked 20 million times to do Eddie Murphy. I've been asked 40 or 50 million times to do Denzel and Barack. So when I get a chance to do the weird ones, it's much more rewarding for me as a performer." Apparently, Kumail Nanjiani has good watch game. This from the Rob Report. Kumail was playing at the Ice House Comedy Club in Pasadena, and the Rob Report noticed he was wearing a watch, specifically a two-tone GMT watch, reference number 167053, which, as you know, hails from the early 80s. And mostly follows the design ethos of its direct predecessor, the 1675, which debuted in the 70s. Yeah, everybody knows that, Rob Report. Come on, everyone knows that. For those of you who don't, both feature a 40mm stainless steel case that's capped by acrylic crystal, no kidding, a yellow gold crown and matching gold bezel ring. The dark brown nipple dial includes protruding hour markers, alongside Rolex's signature Mercedes hands and a Cyclops date window at 3 o'clock. All that encircled, of course, by a striking split-colored brown and gold bezel insert that's become synonymous with the root beer nickname. As you guys know, the 16735 is no longer produced, but you can get a pre-owned one via Bob's Watches. It'll just run you $12,495. The Rob Report adds, if you want to complete the Kumail Nanjiani look, he was wearing a blue knit polo. You can get that at Todd Snyder for $169. Final day of the New York Comedy Festival. Zarna Garg plays Chelsea at 3:30. 7 o'clock, Good Eggs, presented by Mark Normand, Gary Veeder, and Matt Ruby. That's a Gramercy. Brett Goldstein at the Beacon at 8, Andrew Dismukes at the New York Comedy Club East Village at 8, and a bunch of smaller shows. And once again, I can delete a bookmark. As I mentioned yesterday, my browser gets quite crowded. Steve Martin took to Instagram. He's happy that his book was banned by the Florida public school system. Steve Martin insted, "So proud to have my book, Shop Girl, banned in Collier County, Florida. Now people who want to read it will have to buy a copy." Tommy Tiernan shared a terrifying mid-air experience. So there's Tommy, he's on the plane, he's minding his own business, and suddenly a passenger attempts to open the plane's door. According to Tommy, he heard roaring and shouting before watching the person try to open the aircraft's door mid-air. Tommy said the person in question shouted, "I'm not a terrorist," as he was tackled to the floor. Tommy said, "I would suspect he'd either taken a drug a couple days beforehand and was now in the horrors and wanted to get off the plane, or he'd taken something getting on the plane thinking it'd be great crack being an Irish slang term for fun. The edibles are everywhere in California." The captain then made an announcement to inform passengers of an incident on board and was forced to reroute to Winnipeg. Apparently, the police handcuffed the man before removing him from the plane. Tommy said, "We landed in Winnipeg and the police came on. He was a bit sad and concerned, but he wasn't fit for flying. He was more than drugged and more than hungover. He was a stranger to himself. He wasn't right in the head. Everybody was relieved when he left and everybody felt sorry for him. But once you start to open the safety door, you know, California was a treat, lads." Tommy McNamara's debut comedy special and new album, Smoldering, now available on YouTube and via A Special Thing Records, recorded live at the Bell House in Brooklyn. You can hear Tommy's stories about free hot dogs leading to dietary rock bottom, becoming a regular at the Shell station, and bonfire mishaps. Tommy McNamara, Smoldering. I was checking out some clips. It's pretty good. John Cleese is at the Peoria Civic Center tonight. I love the title of his show. It is called An Evening with the Late John Cleese. The show is framed as a funeral for John. He pokes fun at false reports about his own death earlier in 2023. Cleese jokes, "I died several weeks ago, and you've probably read about it in the papers, but fortunately I was able to rise again on the third day, which is an old trick, which my maternal grandmother taught me, which is very useful because I need the money." John said, "When I go out on stage, the people who hate me haven't bought tickets. Only the people who like me have bought tickets. I always get a lovely, warm reception. If I made everybody laugh in the past, then I'll make them laugh on the evening in question." Part of the show is a Q&A. John said a lot of them ask about Monty Python. They'll ask who my favorite Python is and who's going to die next. There's all sorts of dark humor that I enjoy, and we always get something about what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow. I looked it up, roughly 20.1 miles per hour. And that's your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Overcast, Pocket Cast, wherever you get your shows. If you enjoy the show, tell somebody about it. See you tomorrow.